Hey guys, welcome back. I hope you are having an amazing day. Let's get right into the stories. The first one is a pro-revenge story. Let's start this story by saying this happened 5 years ago. I'm now happily married with 2 children and regret absolutely nothing. I was with my ex, Sarah, for 3 years. I had noticed that she was becoming extremely controlling. She expected me to give every little detail of my day and tell her my schedule in advance. If I deviated from that, she would be very upset. "Jake, where were you for the past hour? You said you'd be home by 6, Sarah would demand, her eyes narrowing suspiciously. "I told you I might be late because of traffic," I'd respond, feeling frustrated. She chalked it up to just bad feelings she was having and shrugged it off as her paranoia from past relationships with infidelity. I had never once cheated or strayed, and I never gave her a reason to act like this. It felt unbecoming of my fiancé to act in such a way. Now this is where it gets juicy. After she had asked for my schedule to make plans, as mine tends to be more hectic than hers, I noticed she was texting someone. In my line of work as a software developer, if I put in more than 40 hours, I have the ability to take time off at will as long as the work is completed at a later date. I was very good friends with her brother Mike and still am. We laugh about this to this day, and he actively reminds her of it. I messaged Mike saying, "Hey, I want to do something special for Sarah a little bit earlier than our anniversary. Can you let me know her work schedule?" Mike replied, "Sure thing, man. She works 12-hour shifts Monday through Friday, except for Wednesday when she only works half a day." That's where the discrepancy falls into place. Without my knowledge, she had been taking Wednesdays off right around the time that she started getting extremely controlling. Lucky for me, I had stacked several days of leisure time up, so taking a Wednesday off for me was not an issue. A few days go by, and Wednesday's here. I put on my work gear and leave for work. I was expecting her to leave as our apartment complex had 2 exits on the same road I could see directly across from a shopping center, so I parked my car near the back and waited. After about an hour, I noticed a very specific blue Camaro with a specific decal on the back window. It was her cousin by marriage, Tom. I had also done my due diligence to take an old laptop, which we kept on our desk in an office area with a full view of the living room, bedroom door, and bathroom plus the kitchen. I had set it up for remote access and had it alert me when the webcam noticed movement. Giving her the benefit of the doubt, I thought he may be dropping something off or coming over to assist her with something, as her family sometimes does. Sure enough, a message came through, so I remote into my laptop. Tom walks through the door without skipping a beat. Sarah unbuttons his shirt and begins kissing him. I created a URL link for the live stream, and as she was preoccupied, we had a family group text and a friend group text. They were both part of it, but at the current time, they were currently indisposed and didn't look at their phones. They didn't even wait. They could have gone to the bedroom, but no, they decided to get freaky right there on the couch. I sent the link off to the friend group chat and the family group chat. Within minutes, I'm getting calls non-stop from friends and family alike. There was no turning back. Sarah was getting blown up, but she was ignoring her phone. Not until the 4th or 5th call came through did they decide to take a break. For context, the state I live in allows recording of personal property regardless of occupancy. I was the only one on the lease. She wasn't allowed to be on the lease because of poor credit. The call she had picked up was from Tom's mother, Aunt Linda. She answers the phone on speaker, and I kid you not, the first words out of Linda's mouth were, "Stop fucking my son, you hussy." They both froze, and Sarah began to stutter over her words, saying, What are you talking about?" Linda then divulged that there was a live feed of them sent out by me to her family. Sarah grabbed every pillow off the couch and covered herself up. Tom staggered off, trying to put on his pants and shoes just to trip himself up and bang his head off of my coffee table, leaving it with a divot. By this time, I had made my way to the front of the apartment complex. I was there to greet the adulterer as he came out of the front exit. He froze and began to cry, apologizing profusely. "Jake, I'm so sorry, man. I didn't mean for this to happen," Tom blubbered. "I'm not gonna lie. What happened afterwards wasn't my best moment, and I nearly got into legal trouble if it weren't for the fact that he was trespassing on private property. Let's just say I had a cast for 6 weeks, and he wasn't in any family photos for months." I went up to the apartment where Sarah was now fully clothed and crying inconsolably. "Is that snot or cum on your face?" I asked coldly. "Actually, don't answer because it doesn't matter anyway." I gave her 1 hour to remove all her belongings, as again, everything in the apartment was mine except for clothes, some makeup, and a few kitchen utensils. Her mother would not let her move in, as she was just filled with embarrassment. Same for her brothers, and Tom's mother kicked him out. Rumors spread around our town very quickly, and for a lack of better words, she was untouchable. The next one is an entitled people's story. I never thought I'd be dealing with property disputes at 25, but here I am. My name's Jake, and I inherited my grandpa's farm when he passed away last year. It's been in our family for generations. 150 acres of beautiful countryside just outside the city limits. I grew up helping Grandpa on that farm every summer. Even though I work in IT now, I couldn't bear to sell it. So I've been renting out most of the land to local farmers while I figure out what to do long term. Everything was going fine until Karen moved in next door about 6 months ago. She bought the old Johnson place, a modest house on 5 acres that borders my property. Karen's one of those busybody types who's always got her nose in everyone else's business. Shortly after moving in, she started going door to door trying to convince all us neighbors to form a homeowners association, said it would protect property values and build community. Most of us laughed her off. We like our privacy out here in the country. Karen didn't take kindly to being rejected. She started complaining about every little thing. My tractor was too loud, the cows smelled bad, the cornfields were an eyesore. I tried to be neighborly at first, but eventually I just started ignoring her. Big mistake. One day in early spring, I drove out to check on the back acreage that borders Karen's property. I nearly drove off the road when I saw what was happening. There were bulldozers and construction crews clearing my land. They had already leveled about 10 acres and were starting to pour foundations. I slammed on the brakes and jumped out, running over to confront the foreman. "What the hell is going on here?" I demanded. "This is private property." The foreman looked confused. "We have all the permits and approvals," he said. "The homeowner association president hired us to build a new subdivision here." My blood ran cold. "What homeowner association? There is no homeowner association. I'm the property owner and I never approved this." Now the foreman was getting nervous. He radioed the office, and a few minutes later, who should come speeding up in a fancy SUV but Karen herself. She marched over with a smug look on her face. "Is there a problem here, Jake?" "You're damn right there's a problem," I shouted. "You're trespassing and destroying my property. I want these crews off my land right now." Karen just smirked. "Actually, this isn't your land anymore. As president of the Palm Creek Estates Homeowners Association, I've exercised our right of eminent domain to acquire this property for development. It's all perfectly legal." I was dumbfounded. "What are you talking about? There is no homeowner association here. You can't just steal my land." "Oh, but I can," Karen said, waving a stack of official-looking papers. "I have all the necessary paperwork right here, signed and notarized. This land belongs to the homeowner association now. If you have a problem with it, you can take it up with our lawyers." I was shaking with rage at this point. "Oh, you can bet I'll be talking to lawyers all right, my lawyers. Now get off my property before I call the sheriff." Karen just rolled her eyes. "Go ahead and call them. They can't do anything. This is a civil matter now." With that, she turned on her heel and strutted back to her SUV. I did call the sheriff, but Karen was right. They said it was a legal dispute and they couldn't intervene. So I immediately called my family's lawyer, Jim, and filled him in on the situation. He was as shocked as I was. "This is completely illegal," Jim assured me. "Homeowner associations can't just claim eminent domain, and even if they could, there's no registered homeowner association for your area. Don't worry, we'll get this sorted out." Jim filed for an emergency injunction to stop construction. We had a hearing the next day. Karen showed up with some sleazy attorney in an expensive suit. They presented their evidence. Homeowner association bylaws, eminent domain papers, even a deed transfer. All obviously forged, but convincing at first glance. Fortunately, the judge saw through their lies pretty quickly. It turns out Karen's documents were dated and notarized before she even moved to the area. Plus, the forged signatures didn't match county records. The judge granted our injunction and ordered a full investigation. That's when things got really interesting. The FBI got involved and uncovered a whole web of fraud and corruption. Turns out Karen was working with some shady developers to steal land all over the county using fake homeowner association schemes. They'd forge documents, bribe officials, and intimidate homeowners into surrendering their property. Karen and her conspirators ended up facing multiple federal charges. Wire fraud, racketeering, extortion, you name it. She tried to plea bargain, but the prosecutors had an airtight case. In the end, Karen was sentenced to 15 years in federal prison. Her assets were seized, and she was ordered to pay millions in restitution to her victims. As for me, I not only got my land back, but I was awarded a hefty sum for damages and emotional distress. I used some of it to build a big new barn and donated the rest to a legal aid fund to help other victims of homeowner association fraud. These days, things are pretty quiet around here. I still rent out most of the farmland, but I've started a little hobby farm of my own too, and you can bet I keep a close eye on any new neighbors moving in. I learned the hard way that you can never be too careful when it comes to protecting your property. The whole ordeal was a nightmare, but I'm glad justice was served in the end. Karen thought she could use her fake homeowner association to steal my family's legacy. Instead, she lost everything and ended up behind bars where she belongs. I guess the moral of the story is, don't mess with a farmer and his land. We might seem easygoing, but we'll fight like hell to protect what's ours. The next one is a petty revenge story. I was on an airplane, and right when we landed, a Karen in the back unbuckled and darted to the front of the plane to get off first. She did not make any eye contact and felt that she was special. I'm talking about going from the very last seat on the plane, down the whole row and past first class, basically standing at the little kitchen thing in the front. All this time, the seatbelt sign was still on, and we were still rolling down the runway. The flight crew had asked her to return to her seat until we reached the gate, but she was not even responding. Everyone was basically trying to just wait it out. It was a long flight, 8 HRs, and at this point we were exhausted anyways. Nobody said a word. Suddenly, the captain announced we had a special guest on board and he will be coming out to greet after we were settled at the gate. The Karen stood there awkwardly until we did the whole rolling into the gate and whatever planes do when they land for about 15-20 mins. Everyone sat there waiting to see what the captain was talking about. Eventually, the captain came out and asked the lady to please move back a little to get to his special guest, then a little more, then a little more. He was looking from row to row trying to find a specific person. Everyone is watching and looking around to see who it could be. He kept going and going, asking the Karen to please step back a few more steps each time. Finally, as they approached the rear of the plane, he asked her to sit for a second while he grabbed the intercom at the rear of the plane. Ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to announce our special guest sitting in seat 42C. Let's give her a round of applause. The whole plane was wild with laughter and applause. I loved every moment of that. The next one is a malicious compliance story. The backstory? I worked in a middle management position that coordinated an after-hours care program for adults. I had a micromanaging dinosaur for a boss. Let's call her Hetty. Hetty oversaw the day operation as well, and I shared an office with the direct manager of that program. Given they operated at different times, we often shared clients. But as I did my admin work during business hours, I often briefly visited the clients in their day activities to ask them about their preferred activities for my program. I had no real opportunity to consult them at any other time, particularly as Hetty decreased my allotted admin time further and further. She just loved tightening the noose and took particular delight in nobody ever being able to get comfortable in their role, firmly believing that if she kept us all on our toes, she would get more work out of us. It was stressful and incredibly draining. Another strict rule of Hetty's was that despite female staff being allowed to provide personal care, showers, changing, etc. to male clients, she did not allow male staff to provide intimate care to female clients. This will be important to the story, and yes, I'm fully aware this was gender discrimination, and I argued the point multiple times but was overruled. The only thing Hetty loved more than setting arbitrary rules was catching us out breaking them. It was near impossible to work the position without breaking any of her rules, one of which was that I was not allowed to involve myself in the day service. Involvement basically constituted me being anywhere out of my office and near clients during the day. She would sneak quietly around the building, listening around corners, and then leap out suddenly to catch the offender. One day, one of the clients would be transitioning from the day activities straight into my program for the evening. The entire premise of the program was client choice, and as such, I needed to know what my client would like to cook for dinner so I could purchase groceries before I clocked off. I was discussing it with the client when Hetty zoomed in around the door and asked to see me in her office. She dressed me down for interfering in the other program and told me in no uncertain terms that I was to stay completely away from it and in my own lane, or I'd be facing disciplinary action. Fine, I knew it would come back to bite her. Mere days later, the day program was winding up for the day, with only a few late-staying clients remaining along with one male worker. One of the female clients had a need for a change of clothing. The male worker came and knocked on the door of my office to let me know the client needed changing. Cue the malicious compliance. Worker: Jane needs a change of clothes. Me, loudly, knowing Hetty was next door in her office with the door wide open. Oh, I'm sorry, I'd love to help, but unfortunately you're currently working with the day program and I've been expressly instructed I'm not allowed to interfere. Maybe Hetty can help. I'm sure she's in her office. Worker, knowing all too well the crap we put up with from Hetty, gives me a sly grin and moves on to Hetty's office to interrupt a phone call she was having because, hey, the client comes first. I dutifully stay at my desk listening to her ask the worker to seek my assistance, knowing full well that she heard every word of the previous conversation. Worker repeats my refusal to her and she goes off after much grumbling to assist the client. Of course, Hetty ripped me a new one for not being a team player later on. I simply pointed out her insistence earlier in the week that I not involve myself in any way with the other service. She scoffed and told me I was being deliberately obtuse and of course if there was a need I was duty-bound to meet it. I reiterated that it was impossible for me to know which tasks would be deemed dutiful, and therefore innocently followed her instructions to the letter. She had nothing to come back with on this occasion. It did, unfortunately, escalate her bullying with me, but it was on that trajectory regardless. I ultimately burned out a couple of years later and had to leave, but that one act of malicious compliance remains a bright spot in what was otherwise almost a decade of appalling treatment. I've been in a new role for over 2 years, where I have incredibly supportive management and colleagues, but I still see Hetty around and every time I flip her the bird. The next one is an entitled People's story. My sister, 34, works full-time but has always been irresponsible about money. She has a lot of credit card debt, and there has been several times throughout the year that she has either asked me to borrow money or gone into debt. My mom passed away 3 years ago, and Mother's Day is a very difficult holiday. My dad is elderly, and the last year I was living with him, helping him full-time because he has health issues and otherwise would have to get a caregiver. Prior to that, I had given up my apartment and my job to move in with him as a temporary thing to help out. My dad paid me each month to help him, but nowhere near the amount of money that it would be to hire a professional caregiver. However, he wanted me to be able to get my independence back and be able to get a job again outside of him, so he helped me financially with getting an apartment last month because I've been helping him, which I much appreciated. I still am going over there and helping him several times a week with all of his meal prep, medical appointments, etc. Because I am job searching now, though, when I do get a job, obviously things will shift and he will need to get someone coming in to help. Because Mother's Day is a difficult day after the loss of my mom, my sister had suggested that just the two of us go out today to brunch and a movie. She had found a restaurant and pre-booked the movie tickets, which I paid her for. When we were at lunch, I asked the waiter to put it on separate checks. He ended up putting some of her items on mine because I think he was just confused of how to do it, and I said that's fine and just told her to send me through a cash app like Venmo the money. She kind of brushed it off and just told me she can't right now. I said I'm confused. If he had put the items on your check, you would be paying for it, and she said I asked Dad if I can use his card and pay him back. I can't pay you right now. I was getting increasingly annoyed about this because she knows I am living on a certain budget per month, a pretty low budget that my dad pays me in turn for helping him full-time. She then proceeded to tell me that it's not my money anyway. She said, Dad is paying for your whole life. It's not your money. I was sickened by this comment because I help him full-time and get payment in return. I don't ask her for any help, and she only helps him once in a while. She also has taken money in previous months out of my dad's account. There's a mutual account that's supposed to be used when we buy items for him, and has said it was by accident and told him that she would pay him back and still hasn't several times. Because she was going after me in terms of saying that it's not my money anyway, I said at least I don't steal from him. I clarified that there was a charge last month for $300 that clearly he knows was taken from him. She started to get rude in response and say that it was by accident and she didn't steal it. We left the restaurant and she didn't say a word to me. She headed towards the car instead of the movie theater. I told her if we are not going to the movie, I expect my money back since I already paid her for it. She ignored me and didn't say a word. We get back and she drops me at my car. I told her that I expect to be paid back and I'm not going to forget about it. She ignored me and didn't say anything. I'm beyond upset right now. Already it is a difficult day with the loss of my mom, but the fact that I basically fronted money for her and I feel as though she has no intention to pay me back, and she dismissed that it's even my money in the first place is infuriating. My dad has enabled her a lot, and I have tried to warn him that this continues to happen and it's enabling. He's worried about getting on the out with her, so he gives her money when she needs it and doesn't ask questions. However, with me, if she had asked me in advance and said that she doesn't have money to go out today, but if I could pay for it and she paid me back, I would have said yes. It's more the assumption that's getting me. Thank you for watching. I would really appreciate it if you could like the video and subscribe to our channel if you haven't already. We'll see you again tomorrow.